welcome to today's choice event. I must say, to a very special day, probably for you also joining online just the last day before the longer Christmas, Easter holidays. Spring is already out, sun is out. I'm sitting in Berlin, so it's a very nice atmosphere. And yeah, I feel it's a perfect setting to have some time also to think ahead, to reflect, and also to see and take some time what you can do as next steps. So yeah, today's choice event is all about engaging suppliers for renewable energy, and then specifically in Asia. And yeah, before we come into that, I like to welcome you to today's choice event, and yeah, quickly introduce us for everyone who doesn't know the choice events yet. So first of all, my name is Lara. I'm one of the 3 co-founders of the Climate Choice, and we help companies to decarbonize their supply chains. And doing so, we not only focus on gathering data at scale, climate data in the supply chain, but really also thinking about how to get into emission reduction and therefore engaging suppliers and going into these decarbonization efforts. And yeah, always renewable energy is a topic. We all know it's the next step we have to take, but then there are so many challenges around it where we're going to go deeper into in a bit. And before I do so, yeah, I want to highlight that, yes, this is a webinar in which you can only see me, I don't see you, but that doesn't mean that you cannot participate. So we very much invite you to be active, and there are 2 options for it. So one is you directly have here in the Fragen and Antworten or Q&A, the possibility to write comments and questions during the whole webinar, and we will collect them and ask them later after we have heard an introduction and presentation from our experts. So before I go into next steps, I invite you to test that function. So we already get started with it. And yeah, invite you to share in the Q&A, maybe your name or just from where you are listening in today. So for me, that would be Lara from Berlin. And I'm gonna wait to see who is first to dare to introduce themselves in the chat so that we can all see where the Q&A function is and how to use it for today's session. There's the first one. It's Andrea from Braunschweig and Wolfram from Grazleben. Great. And Venkan from Mumbai. Amazing. Now you see where this chat is. And yeah, please use it for your questions, for comments. We can also answer maybe already things. Maybe you also want to share your experiences there or any thoughts you have. And then the second option, how to stay in contact also after the webinar, is that we have invited you in the email during the registration process for our Slack channel. So there we always keep you posted on the next choice event we share some jobs even because we hear so many in the industry, share news and yeah, get you involved in our community. And yeah, having said that, the climate choice, why are we doing these choice events? I shared we are a Berlin-based company. We focus on our platform, on software. But we really do see when we started also in 2020 that this whole topic of yeah, race to net zero is often something where we maybe don't dare even to see the whole complexity. And in the past, I think most companies were focusing mainly on their own companies and see what they can do there, which is amazing and is the first step you have to do. But then the huge challenge is really where most of the emissions come from, the supply chain. And there it becomes so complex because we really deal with hundreds, sometimes thousands of suppliers internationally. And it's not just about yeah, measurements and data. It's really about the collaboration, empowering your suppliers, working together with them and sharing also your knowledge and yeah, going together the next step. And that's very much what we're going to focus on in today's choice event. And before I get my both experts on stage, I have a second way for you to participate. And that's where I would call in my colleague joining online. So please share the survey. I do see it on the screen, so I hope you do as well. There's a very quick survey where you can go through. So we have an introduction for Trang and Nicolas joining in a bit. Who is here online? So first question I already asked, and some people dare to answer. From where are you joining today? Because we have such a specific topic for Asia, it's always interesting to see if more people from Asia are here. So are you from the DACH region specifically, because we are based here, or from Europe in general, from Asia, America, Africa, and so on? And then the second question is, have you started already a supplier program? And that can also mean a lot of different things. So maybe yes, and you also have been focusing on renewables in that program, or yes, but you haven't specifically focused on renewables. And also, yes, but maybe just with a few suppliers. Most companies start with like a set of strategic important suppliers. Or no, but you're currently in the planning. Or no, but you're here to learn today more. So that's perfectly fine. And then last question, from which role are you actually joining? Because that's also interesting to see that the whole decarbonization journey in Scope 3 is not only a topic where we might expect it in the past in sustainability departments, but more and more from procurement, from supply chain management specifically, maybe also other areas. Sometimes it's data, it's renewables, and so on. So I gave you a little bit time to click into it, just 3 clicks. So I would ask again my colleague to share the result. Stop the survey and share the result. Great, I can see it. So most of you are joining from the DACH region, which is almost 50%. But then we have also 20% joining in from Asia and 10 from Africa. And from the supplier program, it's very mixed, I would say. But also half of you said yes. And then even 15% said yes, and we have renewable energy as a focus topic. So you guys are very welcome to share your experience also in the chat and ask questions. And then we have 23% saying no, but planning and here to learn more. So I think a little bit of everything, which is perfect. And then most of you work in the area of sustainability with 58%, 17% from procurement, and 8% from supply chain management, and also some people that clicked others. Good. I think that's a nice overview. And with that, I would invite Trang and Nicolas on stage. Welcome. Great. How are you both doing?
Very well, thank you, Clara.
All good, Lara. Thank you.
Good. Does this quick survey in the beginning gave you a good understanding who's joining in today?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
Great.
very interesting audience. I look forward to the discussion and the questions.
Yes, I do as well. So thanks for that. I will stop sharing and basically leave the stage to both of you. I already see the slides are coming in. And I would also watch out what's coming in the chat. And after your presentation, I join then for our discussion round. So I would say stage is all yours and very interested to learn more.
Thank you, Lara, for the introduction, and also thank you, the Climate Choice, for inviting us. Very warm welcome from myself and from my colleague Nicolas, for all the participants who are here with us today. The topic of our presentation focus on renewable energy, which is based in the context of how renewable energy is contributing for corporates and also the supply chains in decarbonizing their operations. And of course, we would like to focus on the discussion on renewable energy availability and how renewable energy is being implemented by not only corporates, but also their supply chains in Asia. And Nicola and I will walk you through all of these points. Maybe just a quick introduction on who we are and also where we are from. Myself, my name is Trang Nguyên and I'm based in Vietnam. I'm the head of advisory services of Renewable in Asia. And I'm working directly with many corporates in Asia and also the supply chains or suppliers of many European companies, also Asian companies or US companies in Asia as well on the renewable energy transition topic. For Nicolas, Nicolas is based in Germany, and he's from our renewable strategy team, meaning he's also working with a lot of corporates, not only in Europe, but also in Asia and their supply chains, in helping them to develop renewable strategy and also to build renewable roadmap. And then how can they, in the end, help them to achieve their renewable energy target, or also the GHG reduction target that they might have. We are coming from Renewable, and who is Renewable? We are a German headquarter-based renewable energy advisory firm, and our goal is basically to help companies in the journey to Gen Z to renewable energy in their operation. So we help companies to look into different available solutions of renewable energy in different parts of the world. We help them to build strategy, and we also help them to build renewable energy roadmap. Basically, roadmaps or strategy is a list of different renewable energy solutions, when they can implement these solutions, and where they can implement the solution, or what are the considerations they need to take into account in order to actually implement the solution in different countries. And then, of course, we always aim to see impact achieved, meaning we want our core strength is usually on the implementation advisory services, meaning we help companies during this implementation from tendering process to contract negotiations. Where we are, we have a lot of clients globally in different parts of the world. I think our focus is mainly right now is mainly in Europe, in Asia, and also some part of the US. We're working with different type of clients from different sectors, and not only directly with these companies, we're also supporting their suppliers, because as you are well aware, if you have a target to reduce your carbon footprint, mainly you have to look into the supply chain, because this is where the majority of your emission comes from, and that's why it's so important for the buyers or for the companies to work closely with their suppliers. All right. So this is the content of our presentation. For the first part, Nicolas will walk you through why renewable energy matters, why it's relevant for the whole climate change topics or climate change mitigation topic. What are the key drivers? What are the benefits if companies and supply chains want to procure renewable energy? And for the second part, I will walk you through the availability, the current landscape of renewable energy in APAC region. What are the renewable energy options that many companies are looking into, and also to evaluate how available these options are. It means that then in the end, company and supply chain can decide, or is there options, and if there are options, how can they decide to put the right options for them. And last but not least, we also want to share with you a few implementation challenges that we face, and also our clients are facing in Asia, and how we are helping them to overcome these challenges. All right, so now I would like to hand over to my colleague, Nicolas, for the first part. Nico?
Yeah, so far you seem to be muted. We could hear you when we did
there you go.
Perfect, good.
Now,
yeah. Sometimes it's when switching cameras or sharing or whatever, the system goes differently. So
yeah, I think I got control now on Trang's
all works.
Screen. But all good. No, thank you, Lara. Thank you, Trang. And hello, everyone. As Trang just introduced, I will be taking care of this more introductory part on why do we focus on renewable energy and why in Asia. So to start, this is more a reminder, but it's very linked to our DNA and to the mission of our company itself. Why do we look into renewable energy? It's mainly because of the renewable energy is the single most important tool available for decarbonizing our value chains. That's the main reason. However, there are many benefits that come with it. On a cascade, we've listed here some of them. Obviously, most companies at every level of the supply chain of every product and services from different sectors are already committed to global initiatives and delivering on their targets. Some are struggling with some things, some are struggling with others. But there are also some more implications such as cost control, potential financial services, risk management, benefits, complying with regulations. We've seen some of these now coming from the EU now with CBAM and many other coming now. There's also a benefit on creating brand awareness if some companies are more consumer facing and as well as aligning with these consumers' preferences. And finally, we also see a big benefit on the employee engagement. We work with companies whose main business is not renewable energy, and we are always very surprised and glad to find how engaged and how passionate everyone is about this topic. Then why do we focus on Asia especially? Well, as Tran commented, we are basically based in Asia and in Europe, and we work with companies along the whole value chain of products and services from different sectors. But this special focus in Asia, especially today with today's topic, it's mainly because we've seen over the years how many countries in Asia have become this key player in global supply chains for a number of reasons. We have listed here 4 of them: the strategic geographical locations, the robust infrastructure, skilled labor force, and these dynamic ecosystems, which leads to the next point, which is this fast evolving environment that has come up with Asia as an emerging dynamic manufacturing hub. This is further propelled by this rapid evolution towards renewables we are seeing, and also the very strong sustainability commitment from the companies that are located and manufacturing in the countries we are focusing on. And this is very relevant for some specific sectors. This emphasis on sustainability. We've seen some companies taking very big steps towards sustainability best practices in manufacturing, and these sectors we've listed here some of them as well. Apparel and footwear is very relevant. We work with some companies there as well, brands and suppliers, if you want to go through the whole value chain. Also textile, electronics, we will bring an example now, consumer goods, but also manufacturing and many others. On the electronic sector, we wanted to bring up this example on the back of our research we've done looking into the Scope 3 emissions of the main brands or key players. So here you see in this graph how a picture of the whole ecosystem, how different suppliers are kind of providing products and services to the main brands. We've taken basically this as a basis, and with that we have selected the main players. We've selected or named brands as the companies that are more consumer-facing, finally with the end user or business models that are B2C, and suppliers, the companies that are providing products and services to these brands. What we've done with this, we've first looked into these main brands' emissions using CDP rate data. Most of them are already reporting to the Carbon Disclosure Project, and the data is already available. So we've basically looked into them and their emissions. As no surprise, most of them come from Scope 3, more than 80%. We've looked then into the different categories of the Scope 3 emissions of these brands. We are not going to go into details today on what each category is, but basically we wanted to highlight what we found on category 1 and category 11. There's this big impact of category 11. It accounts for around 50-60% of the overall aggregate emissions of the brands we've analyzed, and this is basically use of sold products. So when we look at it from our perspective of enabling the renewable energy transition for companies, there is not much we can do on that. We just instead have focused on category 1, which is purchase of products and services. So there is a big chunk of Scope 3 emissions of the main brands of this sector that come from their supply chain, basically. So the services and goods they purchase from their suppliers. This accounts for almost half of them, or around 40%, 45, 46, if I remember correctly. So what we've done with that, it's basically deep diving into these suppliers' emissions. So we've taken the main suppliers of these brands and looked into the carbon footprint. We have avoided here going into more scope 3 details. We could go into many data layers, and but to avoid complexities, we have focused here on the carbon footprint, so scope 1 and 2. Most of it comes from scope 2 in the case of these suppliers, and then we directly went into analyzing the energy consumption, which is basically the main source of these emissions. And we have found that most of it comes from electricity for these particular sectors. We have done this same research approach for other sectors. We've seen similarities in this case, but with electronics, it's very relevant how almost 90% of the energy consumption that then translate into emissions for the suppliers come from electricity. Finally, we looked into where this electricity comes from, and it's surprising that more than 80% of it's still non-renewable. So why do we show this example? We wanted to basically set the scene and the questions, and everyone is welcome to keep posting questions in the Q&A and sharing their experiences. But the main question here is why 80%, more than 80%, is still non-renewable electricity in the electronic sector. In general, we've gathered 4 main points as main barriers for renewable energy procurement, not for this sector only, but others as well in Asia. Trang will deep dive on these challenges and give more details. But these main 4 blocks, there are many more, but these main 4 blocks we've selected are the complexities on regulation. In many countries in Asia, especially if we are working with companies that are headquarters somewhere else or in Europe, or that wanted to help suppliers, or that don't have people specialized in the region, we see how regulation it's a barrier. Many people struggle with seeing what's available, what initiatives are in place, what kind of subsidies, what kind of programs as well are available. Then the next one is the business case. It's hard to get into the financials and the implications and potential savings of renewable energy solutions when renewable energy is not your main business activity. So we've seen this as a very big barrier for most of the companies we work with. Then the emission reduction impact, and here is where data comes in. There are many accounting methodologies, many companies out there supporting with this, but sometimes it's hard to get your kind of certainty or enough certainty on the impact these measures for renewable energy will have on your emissions. With that, also, we've added a 4th point where it's lack of specific knowledge. With this, this is very broad in general, but with this we mean mainly lack of specific knowledge, again, on renewable energy options that are available and feasible. Trang will deep dive into this idea later. What are the implications? How can I get how a company can get what they need for their manufacturing requirements? Sometimes they need more high temperatures, sometimes they need lower temperatures for thermal, for example. Sometimes higher volumes of electricity are needed, sometimes less. And it's hard to specifically go into the mechanisms that enable this sourcing of renewable energy to cover those needs. And with this more introductory part, I think Trang will take over now on the more specifics on Asia.
Thank you, Nicolas. So you have now heard from Nico I think a quick introduction on why renewability matters, especially why it matters when it comes to reducing scope 1 and 2 emission. We use the example of the electronic sector. Of course, you know, electronic sector is probably the most the biggest electricity consumer compared to other sectors. I mean, they have huge electricity consumption, especially when we look into the suppliers in Asia. Many companies' annual consumption can be equivalent to the consumption of a small nation. So that's how big it is. The electricity demand comes from this sector. But of course, if we also work with many other sectors, and of course, why the electricity demand is not as high, but still in scope 1 and 2, it still plays a big contribution in the emission, and that's why for companies with the internal target or international public target like ASEAN-based target, usually you will see renewable energy on top of the list of the measures they have to look into until 2030. We have run a survey at the beginning of this webinar to see where our participants are from, and clearly there's a lot of participants coming from Europe. And of course, when you are in renewable energy developed markets like Europe, then you hear about it on a daily basis. You also have a lot of interaction. Companies or even households can even choose what type of electricity, or they can even choose to buy electricity from renewable energy projects. So it's a very common, let's say, very common topic for people in this market. But when we go to Asia, it's a very different, let's say you will see a very different perspective, especially when you are a company or corporate in Europe and you try to convey this message, you try to encourage your suppliers in Asia to adopt renewable energy. Clearly, there you will realize a big gap in their knowledge. And also why? Because Nico already mentioned, because of the complexity of regulation, also because of the low availability of renewable energy in Asia. So for this second part, we will walk you through some of this observation when it comes to renewable energy in APAC region. A few questions we usually receive from the suppliers in Asia when we talk about renewable energy is they usually ask, what is renewable energy? Of course, it's easy to understand. It comes from renewable energy sources like solar, or wind, or hydrogen, for example. But then the type, what is renewable energy is very different from how they can procure renewable energy. So usually we have to help them to understand what are the models, what are the products, renewable energy products that they can actually buy in Asia. And these are the 4 groups of solutions, renewable energy solutions we can see or we can find in some of the countries in Asia. Not all Asian countries would have all of these solutions already at the moment, but we actually can find some of the solutions in some countries. So first one is green tariff. Green tariff is basically a premium product from the utility company. If they have access to renewable energy projects, then they can also offer to their existing clients, say, if you want to have green electricity, you will receive also certificate for that, then basically you can pay a premium compared to the traditional electricity. The second product is energy certificate. So I think if we look into the landscape of renewable energy in Asia, clearly right now, unbundled energy certificate is probably one of the most available solutions. And that's why many companies are using this certificate as a temporary solution to meet the target or to increase their consumption on renewable energy. So they can look around. Of course, there are certain limits to buying certificate because, for example, if they want to buy indirect, then it has to come from the projects within the same country, and also they have to pay attention. Indirect is an international system, and sometimes some countries they also have their national certificate system, and that's why company can also look into that. For example, if we look into Malaysia, they have this national RAC system. If you look into China, they have this GEC, China certificate system, which will at some point replace the IREC in China. So there are certain national system and also international national system that companies can look into when they want to procure certificate. Of course, certificate offer a flexible solution, and so company don't really have to commit it to long term. They can decide to buy certificate on an annual basis. However, this solution is purely cost solution, right? They just have to pay for it, but there's no benefit on cost saving, and that's why for many companies, they can use it as a temporary solution, but of course they want to find other solution that can also bring them economic benefit, and which we can come to the next solution, which is the on-site solutions. On-site means they have a system on-site at their facilities, and right now in Asia, the on-site solution is most of the time is rooftop solar, and also most of the time in most countries in Asia, On-site or rooftop solar is also allowed by many governments, and this is usually one of the first renewable solution the company will apply. The next one is probably something that many companies and also many supply chain in Asia are looking forward to, which is the off-site solution under the format of power purchase agreement or PPA. Because this is where they can actually procure renewable procurement at scale. If they have a lot of electricity consumption, but on-site solution, rooftop solar can only replace 10% of their electricity demand. Energy certificate, they can buy as many as they want, but it costs. Green tariff, it also comes with an additional cost. So they are looking forward to see until when PPA, off-site PPA will be available or will be allowed by in many Asian countries. The last one is direct investment, which is also an off-site solution, but this is basically a very capex or capital intensive option, which not so many companies can actually pursue, because then they have to put a lot of capital into by investing into solar farm or wind farm, renewable project, and then they will receive return on investment, and they can also claim the ownership of the certificate coming from those power plants. So the second question, the first question from the suppliers we usually face was like, what are the solutions? And the second question is, then how can they select the solution? It really depends whether they are committing to international standard like I100 or they have science-based target. Then of course they have to check what are the technical requirements or technical criteria in terms of renewable energy. So the guiding principle is usually to prioritize physical system that they can install on site and they can really generate real electricity and use and consume this electricity. The second principle is additionality, because in the end we want to create positive impact on the environment, and it means we want to encourage new capacity for renewable energy. So it means if by buying certificate or buying electricity, companies, supply chains actually provide a financing source for those renewable companies to bring investment into creating this project, then this is also a very good type of renewable. Long-term commitment as well, because in the end, I mean, if they want to change it to being more sustainable, then of course it's encouraged and it's recommended that they stay on that as long as possible. So long-term commitment in terms of signing a PPA for 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years, showing that this long-term commitment instead of just buying certificate on an annual basis, and then maybe next year they will stop buying it and then going back to the traditional. So these are the three guiding principles for companies or supply chains to use. If they have different solutions, they can use this guiding principle to apply and then select and prioritize the type of renewable option they want to go with first. So I mean, in this pyramid, you can see clearly on-site solution like rooftop solar is on the top because it basically meets all these three guiding principles. Off-site solution would be on the physical PPA or virtual PPA or direct investment, because it's basically helped new projects or new capacity to be built. We also have the second group of off-site renewable energy, meaning this green tariff or green product, which probably of a lower hierarchy, because it doesn't necessarily mean that there's new capacity being built, right? UT company, they can also offer this green product coming from hydrogen power plants, and hydro power plant, they're already there for 40 years. So it doesn't really bring this additionality. And I think at the top of this pyramid is basically this unbundled EEC, because unbundled can also come from very old hydro power plants, and in many cases also it doesn't really help to create new projects, and that's why unbundled EEC is usually at the bottom of this pyramid. And also, but however, in the context of Asia, on-site rooftop solar and unbundled EEC actually still the most available options, and that's why company and supply chains, they would go to this option first. And the reason is, if you look into the power sector in many Asian countries, these sectors are highly regulated. It's not a free market like in Europe, where there are a lot of participation from the private companies. In Asia, it's mainly state-owned companies. They only allow very little participants or investment from private companies. And it means that they also control electricity price for different reasons. For political reasons, they want to maintain political stability in the country. And they also want to attract a lot of foreign investment, and that's why they try to maintain electricity price at a certain level, affordable level as well. And it means that sometimes a government have to provide subsidy to keep this electricity price at a certain level. Also, we see that regulation for renewable energy or for power sector in general in Asia are very different from one country to another. And most of the time, offsite solutions are being very limited. And that's why if you look at this color coding for different solutions, you will see offsite is still indirect part, meaning they are not that available. And of course, and we have green product, which is provided by in certain countries, which is now in the yellow. But for green tariff or green product, it also depends on how many projects or what total volume of renewable energy in each country. Recently, if you follow the news in Malaysia, they have been offering this green tariff for a while, and now it stopped because the capacity of renewable energy in Malaysia is now over. It's fully booked. So new companies who want to go to buy this green product, they cannot get access anymore because all of the available capacity have been reserved for other companies. All right. Now we look into we go a bit into country specific. So we just listed here like 5 countries in Asia. So you can see different colors here. Of course, the first column on-site solution or rooftop solar is all green because this solution is very available in most of the countries. The second column is on PPA or off-site PPA. As I mentioned, China, they have this green electricity trading program, which is now on full scale of implementation, and also attracting a lot of attention from both local and international community who has target and who also have a lot of production in China and who needs to have renewable energy. We also see a lot different type of corporate or offsite PPA in Taiwan as well. However, the competition for offsite PPA in Taiwan is really, really fierce because they have a big electronic industry in Taiwan, and this industry is being protected by the government, meaning all of the electronic companies, they will be given priority when it comes to allocating offsite PPA or allocating renewable energy. It means other companies from other sectors will have a lot of challenges if they want to get access to green electricity in Taiwan. Unbundled EC, as I mentioned, is also quite available. Some countries like China or Taiwan, Indonesia, they have their national scheme, but at the same time, Iraq, the international system, are also available in all of the countries. Green product also only available in some countries, and I think at some point, if they cannot increase the renewable capacity properly, the green product will also run out. We have been discussing availability, but when it comes to implementation, availability doesn't always mean that it can be implemented or it can be implemented easily. So for this slide, we would like to share with you some challenges that both our clients and us, when we work together, we are facing these challenges to implement renewable projects. So the first group is on-site solution. Even though many countries say, hey, you can do rooftop solar. But when it comes to acquiring permits, it can be quite challenging. For example, in Vietnam, I would say if you look back 3 years ago, it was really a hot place or hot spot for rooftop solar. Many companies managed to have their projects. However, at the moment, due to change in regulation and also the cap of our target until 2030, the remaining quota of solar rooftop is very limited in Vietnam. And that's why for any companies who want to have rooftop solar, it's basically a competition to get the permit done. Indonesia is a different story, even though regulation said any company can have rooftop solar, and then they can also install the size that they want. Actually, the utility company, PLN, will decide at the end what is the project size, and usually it's just 10% or 15% of what they can actually install on the roof. When we look at offsite solution for EAC, it's available in most countries. However, the volumes and the price also quite different. If you look into Taiwan, as I mentioned, it's a big competition. The price of EAC or IREC in Taiwan can go up to $40 and sometimes even $80 per megawatt hour, Whereas if you look into other countries like Vietnam and Indonesia, maybe indirect is still in a very affordable level, like a few dollars per megawatt hours. For China, they have a national system of GEC, and GEC price has changed quite significantly over the years for different reasons. Sometimes because the price go up so fast because it basically is being used as a subsidy mechanism for renewable energy, and that's why it's so expensive. But then suddenly last year and early this year, we see GEC price has dropped down because the government say this system will become the only system of certificate in China, and suddenly by developers and renewable energy project, they want to show their support for the government. They basically reduce the price of GEC. But we also expect GEC price to go up again because the demand, there's still a gap between the supply and demand. If we look into PPA, as right now it's still very limited in most Asian countries, we also see that PPA is probably the most complicated topic or solution for companies to pursue because they're not familiar, they don't have experience how to procure, how to set up a contract, how to negotiate this contract, especially if it's 20 years. And they also don't know how to, let's say, negotiate price. How can they put price prediction into the contract, because price uncertainty in Asia is a fact. Nobody knows what price the government will put in place in the next few years, let alone 20 years. So that's why it's hard for them to say, how can we negotiate price for the next 20 years? And that's why usually we would work for company. We work a lot with many companies who want to go into this PPA because they need support on negotiation and also to make sure all the risks are covered. And right now, PPAs are mainly available in China, Malaysia, and Japan for Asia. For Vietnam, there's already a program being planned for the last 5 years, but it has been delayed. And right now, we can still not say when the government in Vietnam will approve this. So I think the last part we just want to share with you, considering all of these challenges and all of this limitation for Asian when it comes to procuring renewable energy, I think in the end we still have to find the right way to approach this issue. And usually we would advise our clients and companies and supply chain to build the roadmap, because sometimes people don't think that they need to start with strategy. They just look around, see what is available, and then they just spontaneously and pick one and go into implementation right away without understanding what is awaiting. So for roadmap, I mean, to make sure that they have the right strategy. So the first step on building a roadmap is to look into what exactly is available, check the regulation, check whether with their site condition, which option is actually feasible. The second one is knowing this list of potential solutions. Then they need to make priorities. And this is where the internal policy and internal expectation of the company comes in. Is it important for them that they need to have saving? Is it important that, or they only want to showcase this project? They put more emphasis on feasibility, for example. So each company will have different policies when it comes to choosing the solution. So we will plug in the internal input together with the external conditions of the market. And then, of course, we have to check what do they have a target. Is it a carbon reduction target, or is it a specific renewability target? And then how all of the solution can play together in a roadmap to help them to achieve the target. And at the end, they will have a roadmap, a very clear roadmap to know when they can do what and how. And then by the end, by the year of their deadline or the year of their target, whether they can deliver or not. So last but not least, you have seen here the first two steps we already discussed on the strategy side, on the roadmap side. After having those roadmap and strategy, of course, the next step is implementation. And we added here this supplier brand collaboration, because we think it's very important for the brand and suppliers to work together in this, because usually the decarbonization is the pressure from the buyer. If you talk to suppliers in Asia and ask them, do you have a pressure from the brand? Do you do this because the brand asks you or your client asks you? Most of the time, the answer is yes. They only take action because there's pressure externally. Very, very few companies who actually say this is something we want for ourselves. And that's why to push this topic in many supply chain in Asia, we still see the importance of the collaboration between the supplier and the brands. The brand can help with many things. They don't have to necessarily invest or bring investment into this project, but they can help with capacity building. they can help with strategy or roadmap building. So a lot of upstream steps that brand or buyers can help suppliers to start with. The last step is implementation, and as I mentioned, renewable energy procurement is still a very new thing in Asia for many companies, especially very local ones. So to design a procurement process, to run a procurement process, or to even negotiate a contract for them is very challenging. And that's why this is where we see a lot of support is needed. Depending on the sector as well, I think some sectors have a lot of capacity and also knowledge, but some sector they basically don't have that capacity, and where this is where also the buyer, the brands can comes in, working with advisor to help their suppliers to move forward. Yeah, so I think that's it for our presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you need further information, here is our contact. We are always happy to take up any question even now or also after the event.
Thank you, Trang, and also Nicolas. Yeah, I very much loved the insightfulness that you brought to this webinar. So I always love when we learn a lot, and there was a lot inside. And therefore, I have a lot of questions directly. I also see we have questions in the chat, but that is maybe the reminder and chance for everyone to really ask what you have in mind to get started maybe tomorrow or next week when you want to get into your supply chain program. Maybe I would start very much at the beginning with my question. So Nicolas, you had this very great overview of, well, most of the emissions come from the supply chain, no surprise, but then that actually, like, I think it was 40% are related to category 1, so purchasing of products and goods, and then therefrom 80% from emissions. So how much, I mean, like, I just want to point out the obvious, but like, how much can people then expect if they would manage to change or to work together with suppliers to switch to renewables? What is the typical number of reduction they can achieve there then? So that's also always a question we get, like, does it mean they have zero then? Or for which area? What do you say? What is the rule of thumbs, I think you say, how much emission reduction you can have from switching to renewables?
Yeah, it's super hard to get an absolute number. So there are many data points involved. And you see the whole layers we went down from the brand scope 3 to the suppliers' electricity consumption. So it's really, I wouldn't dare to give a number. For sure, it will make a big impact. And obviously the electricity you get from renewables, it's nearly zero emissions. But yeah, I wouldn't dare to give an absolute number. I don't know, Trang, if you would add anything to this.
Yeah, I think probably for electronics, which is our example here, because the emission come from energy or electricity consumption is super high. And from our research, by converting to renewable energy, they actually can reduce 50% of their emissions. But if you look into other sector, it's always the profile, the energy profile, also the emission profile of each sector. We need to look into that in order able to say how much emission reduction can be achieved with renewable energy. If you look into the profile of other sectors, probably energy is not as high, emission from energy is not as high as electronics. Probably emission from agriculture or from upstream processes like the material production is much higher than downstream, and probably maybe if we say agriculture, for example, or food and beverage sector, the total emission coming from the upstream side is super high, and it means renewable energy maybe play a less major role to reduce emission compared to this sector. So I would say we have to look into the profile of each sector.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally love your answer. It depends, right? That's always the science behind it. But still also this one sentence, right? It can be up to, or you said now 50%. That really, I think so often it's not that clear that really switching to renewable has this huge impact. And I think we often hear this, my own emissions are someone else's scope 3 emission, right? And this picture shows it so great. The scope 2 emissions of the suppliers, the energy-based emissions, are then the Scope 3 emissions in category 1 you buy in to a very big part. So if you bring those emissions to almost zero, for sure, also there are some emissions connected to generating renewable energy, but so much less, it has a huge impact, right? And I feel that's so often overlooked because we all know renewables are part of this decarbonization journey, but somehow it's not new and maybe therefore not that sexy, somehow innovative, but it has a huge impact. So I really love the slide for that. And then there was a question, and you also answered it. So maybe we can have a look into the different countries as a very nice overview you had. So there was a question like, yeah, how does the availability of renewables split up in Asia? And you had that overview. I might recall it didn't have India in it, right? Do I have that? Or does
No, we didn't have India in the slide. Yeah.
Yeah, do you have any ideas on that? Because I think the person who asked is located in
Yeah.
India.
I don't really have the sorry, I don't have the figure for India right now, but when you look into Asia, and I would assume this question is about the whole power sector mix, right? How many percentage is still traditional and from fossil fuel power plant, and how many percentage is from renewable energy project, right? If I get it right.
Yeah.
It really depends, right? If you look into Vietnam, for example, right now we at maybe 10% renewable energy, and we have a target until 2030 to increase it to probably 15 to 20%. If you look at China, it's a very different story. They are global leaders in renewable energy. But even though the share of renewable energy is still not as big as coal and other conventional, basically because they're just too big. So I think if we have to have an average of whole Asia, I would say it would range between it's a big range. Of course, also another example is Bangladesh, right? Because the renewable energy would require a lot of land use, and for small country, and also like Bangladesh or Taiwan, they are facing challenges because they just don't have enough land capacity to be renewable energy. So it means we have a big range from few percentage to as much as 30% in Asia on average.
So really this on-site production, which you said is most available, right? Even though it's often, I also like the what you said. I think you said 10 to 15% of the actual energy demand is just covered by often on-site installations. So you kind of have this, it's very available, but then it's not covering all the consumption as well. But would you say that is like the quick start into, is that the most easy engagement strategy on renewables if you want to start with something with your suppliers?
I think because we have discussed availability, but then we also discussed how easy it is to implement, because having a regulation in place, having that available doesn't mean that it's easy to implement. So I think the on-site solution is actually all of these three requirements are there for on-site. So most of the countries would say they allow it. They allow companies to install a system on their roof. It's available. There are a lot of service provider or solar companies in many countries to offer different solutions, from self-investment to third-party investment. So I would say that's the most available, and also that's also right now is the most easy to implement. I mean, easy not in the sense that it can be done like in a few days and so easily for everybody, but still that's why company will start with on-site most of the time in Asia, because it's most available.
Yeah. That would lead me maybe to one of my final questions. You had this very nice overview as a roadmap and next steps, right? And that's always our goal with the webinars, to take something practical out, like how can I really learn something that I can implement? And I mean, like we normally work together with companies where they also ask the suppliers with a quick climate check, like, do you actually take already reduction efforts? And then specifically, do you use renewables? So typically they have a big group of suppliers, more than 50%, that answer, no, we are not using renewables yet. And then you have maybe some who say, okay, we already do something, we use renewables. So what would you do with these two groups groups, maybe if you have identified a huge part of suppliers that are not doing something. Now, let's assume they are based in Asia. For sure, that's not always the case. But then you have also some who might already have an installation. So how would you do work with these two different groups to improve them even more?
I think for us would be the top two, let's say our approach would be on these two aspects. First one is there a requirement or is there a pressure from their buyers to have renewable energy? Or it means if their buyers have a renewable target and they're pushing it down to the suppliers, and it means the suppliers will have to do something. Second aspect is what is the business case? I mean, in the end, they are business. So they make decision, of course, most of the time on the business case. So if we want to approach them and say, renewable energy is benefit for you, I think our pitch would be on what is the business case for them? What are the benefits for them to have renewable energy? Not because their buyers are pressing them, not because they will become more sustainable, not only because they will help with climate change mitigation, but actually because it's really, really bring economic benefit. And in this case, for their company, like they will have either direct saving, because in on-site solution in many countries already, the electricity from on-site system is already cheaper or on the same level with grid price. So they usually have economic benefit. Second, indirect economic benefit is by having renewable energy, they will receive more orders and business from the client. So we all usually have to approach them from the business perspective.
Mm-hmm. I very much love this answer. So first, it really has like also communicate that you have targets and make clear why you are asking these questions, like really saying you are committed to science-based targets, or you also mentioned Renewable 100 program. So do you expect or you wish to identify suppliers that are really using renewable energy? And then you could find a way to make it a business case for the supplier, maybe enhancing your procurement order or giving a longer contract and say, okay, instead of like 1 or 2 years, we now go into 5 years, or maybe there's a possibility to 10 years even, to say, if you go without that journey and also use renewables, we are like committing also in a long-term contract. And I think you also said, right, helping with negotiation power could really also be leveraged there. I assume that. Do you see a lot of companies are really actively going there already and doing the PPA orders for their supplier or helping in this contracting?
Not so many in Asia, unfortunately. Suppliers still have to, go through this journey alone. They receive this request from the buyers, but in the end, they still are quite lonely in implementation themselves. So that's why we want to put this enhanced collaboration in our slide, because we think it's so important that buyers help the supplier as much as they can. And also, it's not that easy to implement as well, because regulation also quite limited. So and sometimes company would tell us they know they're saving, but the effort to go through the process is much higher than that what they would save. So the saving and the effort is not balanced. And that's why sometimes they would even decide not to go with it, just because the effort is too much.
Yeah, very much love that, because I think, really buyers often think being based in Europe, maybe how can they support? And then, maybe investing in all of it is not for everyone available, but using your procurement power and maybe bundle different suppliers and really help them with that contract, which definitely also helps the buying company, because they can then already have the certificates as well, and like have the whole documentation, and like can really see where the energy comes from if they were part of the negotiation. I think that's a really good tip that I'm gonna take on my list, learning from you guys today. I always love to close with one question, which might be super difficult or easy, I don't know, depends. If someone now listened in for an hour and it's really hard to understand the whole context, what is the one advice or one sentence as a summary you would wish them to remember and have in mind? Maybe Trang, Nicolas, do you have a statement for that? Can also be but
yes, I would say engage with your client and engage with the management level as early as possible, because most of the time they engage with operational level. But the decision maker, the who will make decision on investment, on roadmap, on strategy is management level. So engage with them as soon as possible and help them to change their mind, help them to set up the right strategy, not only for sustainability, but also for their business.
Love that answer. Nicolas?
Totally echo that. Yeah, get backed by them since the beginning, and everything will go a lot more smoothly. Yeah.
Okay, you both didn't knew that, but you gave me a perfect bridge. So we have in 2 weeks our next choice event coming up, and it will be with Andrew from the US. He worked with some of the leading Fortune 500 companies, and his topic will be how to get my board behind my climate journey for Scope 3. So how to not have it just as a marketing story maybe, or something that's isolated, but really how to engage your C-level, your board members, and from there get the decision making going, the budgets aligned, and then also get all of your teams in the company engaged, and not just as a burden, so to say, in reporting and sustainability teams. So thank you for that,
Great.
Brit. Thanks a lot. And yeah, I very much enjoyed that webinar. Thank you so much for joining in, especially also Trung. I guess it's a little bit later for you. And you told me before also it's a summer season, so staying in a room to take a webinar can be challenging.
No, it's my pleasure.
It was definitely mine. And yeah, everyone joining online, thank you so much for listening in. We invite you to the next choice event, and please directly also reach out to both Nicolas and Trung if you want to have the slides. We share the recording later, or if you have specific questions to support your suppliers as well. Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Thanks a
Have
lot.
a nice
Bye.
time.
Take care.